Welcome to Expedient Means with Lin A. Wei on Time Monk Radio. Lin currently resides in China and is the founder and head teacher of Guizhen Philocultural Society. He has extensive experience in Buddhist and Taoist meditation, Qigong, martial arts, and traditional Chinese medicine. To learn more about Lin, please visit his website at www.guizhenhui.net. This program is dedicated to exploring various facets of these teachings with hopes of making the knowledge more widely accessible. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Lin, for joining us again. On tonight's episode, we will be discussing how to recognize states along the path. Are you there, Lin?
Yes, how you doing?
Good, how you doing?
All is good. Thanks for having us again.
Thank you for joining us. So tonight I thought it'd be a good topic to discuss how to recognize states along the path. Basically, real states, false states, markers, things that may happen. And yeah, I was just wondering if you could share some knowledge on that.
Well, basically, recognizing states along the path, this method or this mannerism is very, very important. You can say that if one started just to practice meditation, Qigong, and if it was not just meditation, Qigong, but practicing mental focuses for developing psychic awareness, different spiritual abilities in general, there's going to be states along that path of practice. You can say that will become an obstruction. Maybe one, in the sense of saying psychic abilities, one may start to get flashes or instances in their mind about what may happen or what had happened in a past life or something, or hear people's thoughts or feel extreme sympathy or just feel emotion from other people or sympathy for other people, and it becomes enhanced at certain times. It may not be consistent, just once in a while. That's a state. And the problem with that is that we add our thinking to it. So we add our ideas to what we experience, and that is the obstruction. And it comes because of the state, and it comes because of our habit of thinking what we got is something good. Once we do that, we start building on these ideas that it's good, and we start building that we got something. We start building the I, basically. Even if it's the quote-unquote non-egotistical I, the I of the I am, the overall I am all thing without being something, that's still stating that there is something. So it's creating view separation. This is going to be the obstruction. And the state will open doors for further obstruction to come and actually hinder you later on for your path. So this can go very deep, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard before that a lot of times and in a lot of the sutras that they discuss these states, and they discuss them as possible pitfalls or traps insofar as, people hit these states and then they think they've achieved something and they think the state's going to last forever, and they'll essentially stop meditating or stop their practices, and then the states inherently go away.
Right, it's temporary. See, one of the sutras, we'll call it a very, very... All the sutras are important in Buddhist teaching because they'll speak to open up the original nature, open up your mind to the original nature and become a Buddha. But one has something very specific. It's called the Shurangama Sutra. And towards the end of the sutra, there's a section called the 50 Skanda Demon States. And it goes into extreme detail of 50. That means it's general. It doesn't mean there's only 50. There could be 500. There could be 5 billion different combinations of states that come to somebody's mind, depending on their own mind itself and their affliction. So it's just given a general idea of what to be expecting. And now the 50 Skanda Demon States is the general idea of what to expect on the road of cultivation, whether you're Buddhist, Taoist, Catholic, and you do prayers and you hit some states of bliss and whatnot, and some believe it's God actually doing this to them. And as long as they have that pure heart and they're not like, oh, this is me and I'm this great angel now of God, and God said I'm this and that, they're gonna be fine. But if they turn around and say, if they turn around and state that they are this great messenger of God and they are the one and only whatever, there's gonna be problems. That's not a good thing. So anyway, these are just general states that occur in the mind of the cultivator, in any tradition, in any mannerism, generally. So it's kind of like a demon spotting mirror or an affliction spotting mirror.
Would that go?
Demon.
Sorry, I interrupted there. Lynn. Would that kind of go along with that old saying that if you meet the Buddha on the path, kill him?
Yeah, that phrase. There's a second part, and if you see a demon on the road, you also kill him too. That phrase has been used so loosely and has been bastardized so terribly as a way of making the person who says it as being an authority in something. So when someone goes, oh, you're meditating, when you meet the Buddha, you got to kill the Buddha, and they think it's cool to say I killed the Buddha. Or that's what I do if I see the Buddha in my mind, because I don't want to get stuck and, be lost. I don't want to attach to anything. But there's a certain type of, a certain feeling that comes out of the voice of someone saying such things. And that's what you got to be careful for. Things aren't in just what you can hear straight out. They're in the tonation. They're in the vibration. And you got to be very, very consciously aware of that without discriminating thoughts, so you can actually understand what is being transferred in a communication with somebody. Excuse me.
Could you say that anything that's building up the ego or reinforcing the ego, odds are it's probably a false state or a false sense?
Now, in cultivation, some say that the ego is good. It's necessary. It gives you a personality. Well, that's what we want to chop off. We want to chop off the ego. We want to chop off the personality because it keeps you separate from others. I mean, think of it this way. Here we have a society, and we have individual society, meaning we're not in the old town style where everybody knows each other and everyone understands the skills each other have. So we are not very communicative in our modern time with each other now as we were, back maybe even 50 years ago or 100 years ago or whatnot. We're not. People are very individualized. They're individuals, but they work for the whole without realizing it. And I'm talking the whole as being a government level. So in the sense of them doing their job, making their money, paying their taxes, they're working for the whole. Higher up aspect, not for the whole as a societal aspect. Okay? Now, when it comes to cultivation, this is a comparison, why I make this point. When we say that there is an I, the overall I am, that God, head, or whatnot, we are still creating a separation. So we're not feeding into the actual overall whole that is without boundary, stating that each and every one of us are not separate. I mean, each and every one of us are taken how do I say this? Sometimes certain methods, certain things are just, it's difficult for me to explain in general, in language itself. When we cause views in our mind that state we are different from other people, even we're not thinking that we're different, we will create this barrier. And we almost, in a sense, manifest the idea that we are cutting off from the rest and that everyone has to be seeing us for something greater. So we put ourselves on our own pedestal and assume everyone else has to worship us or give us some type of recognition. And that is a terrible thing because that really just takes you away from what's actually going to be happening in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I think you see that a lot in the spiritual community. Even people that do achieve some ability or some states. I mean, you just get building their ego up so often, and it's almost like counterproductive.
Well, yes, and remember the last statement the last sentence was something about what's going to be happening in the future, meaning we create our outcomes. So when we put these specific, we fuel our mind with specific ideas, the repercussions from this, okay, what's going to be happening will influence us for our future. So we'll do certain things to create the views of separation or empower the idea of separation for our own benefit. And then in the future, we'll understand that it didn't work out well, and we are left to hang out dry and all alone under the sun with no help whatsoever. These are the negative sides of certain states of egotism, or adding to the I, the overall quote-unquote I am view.
Well, why don't we not dwell on the negative for the time being? Let's could we discuss maybe some of the positive markers that kind of are indicating you're progressing, or?
Okay, this brings us up to the dichotomy, though. You see, all states are, in the sense, when we take the discriminating mind aside, they are both neither or. They are not good and they are not bad, and they don't exist as anything. So a state in general is just something that is the way it is. We add whether or not it's going to be a good state or a bad state, but overall, if we don't add to it, then it's still a good state. If we add to it by our false thinking, it changes. You see, we don't have to do anything to it at all. And
so could you say even if you did achieve some of these egotistical states, I guess, if you in the end learn from that, or if that, maybe that is just a stage some people have to go through and break through that to get to the next level, is that what you're saying?
Yes, well basically, there is no state that has a personality. So there's no ego in any of the states whatsoever. We make it that way. I'll give you a quick example. Someone who's cultivating for psychic abilities, all of a sudden, out of as long as they were practicing, just any day or any amount of time, it doesn't matter, all of a sudden they start to see something that will happen in the future, maybe the day after. So they go find the person they see, maybe it's a friend they know, and they tell that person, this may happen to you tomorrow, I had this vision. Okay, and the person doesn't believe it, and then it happens. Now that person who had the psychic experience starts believing that they have this ability. So they start saying, I can see the future now. So they want to do it more. Then they start telling people that they can see the future, that they have the ability, that this is theirs, and they are getting really good at it. And then they keep telling people what's going to be happening. Because they are attaching and adding to it and looking for people to say, yes, you do got it, you're pretty good, let me send you some business, okay? It turns into a bad state. Don't think because money gets involved that it's bad. Just think that because they're using it for money and they're adding or they're attaching to this state or this inevitable ability due to their own practice, they're attaching to it. This is what's going to cause their downfall. It has nothing to do with that they get the ability or not. It's due with their own mind and what they do with it.
Well, I was going to say, you do hear a lot of these stories about so-called psychics, and some of them I'm sure do have abilities, but a lot of times when they're under the gun, they have problems manifesting that ability.
Right.
Yeah, it's
there's a reason for that. I mean, it's not the overall reason, but there's a reason for why when you're under the gun, most people who do have a genuine ability, that means it's not something that's passing them by after a few years. They just lost and they don't have any more ability. But someone who actually has this set into their karmic manifestation of their lifetime. There's a reason, and the reason is very simple. Because there are those who will oppose it, and you have to prove to them that it's true, they will be more and more powerful than you because there are more of them, and their ability to disbelieve, okay, and influence your energy with their disbelief will just stop what you're doing from being successful at that moment.
That's interesting. I've never heard it expressed that way.
It's an energetic dynamic. I mean,
it almost reminds me of observation theory in physics. Where basically, once people start observing something, then that changes the results.
Interesting. You see, I give an example. When I was younger and I was practicing these kind of things, what we're talking about, psychic abilities, and I didn't understand that they were what they were. I was just taught, do this and things will happen, and when they do, tell me about them and we'll go through it together. That's what my second eldest sister would tell me. She didn't want me to think I was anything special. She took very care. She was very careful on that. But when my friends would find my journals and start questioning me, So you're learning how to read tarot cards. Oh, you're learning how to do dreamscaping. Oh, you're learning that they don't know what the hell they're talking about anyway. But they are just basically trying to pick on me, play around with me. During the time that they would do it, I had felt overwhelmed. And of course I was young, 13, 14. So I didn't have much practice in developing the let me make my energy stronger and not let these people influence me kind of thing, kind of just quote-unquote protection, psychic protection. They didn't know they were trying to hurt me energetically, but I did, but I didn't know what to do about it because I wasn't at that level yet. I learned maybe about a year or two later. Excuse me. So when they would bother me, I felt almost powerless, that I couldn't do what I know I was able to do. Only because I felt that they had more power over me in the sense that I was still new at this and I didn't have enough experience and I couldn't explain to them certain things and they didn't have the capacity to understand anyway, so they would just try to find other things to try to abuse me with. Lo and behold, a year and a half, 2 years later, when I learned how to control that energy and stop things from affecting me that way, they kind of felt that. And they would come to me individually, asking me to read their cards, interpret their dreams, try to find out why they have certain problems emotionally or mentally or something like that. And then it would work. Now, it doesn't mean that's the way it is. That's just how the experience came to me as a young teenager, trying to empower these things I had as a toddler, because I was this way as a child too. So that's just one idea in the sense of how things can be influenced by the opposition when you're just learning or when you think you got it.
That's very interesting. So what would be, what causes these states to arise?
Think of when you eat food, when you're hungry and you eat food, and all of a sudden you don't feel hungry anymore. That very simple explanation says it all. It's inevitable that you will not be hungry if you eat something, and you eat your full. Excuse me. But with meditation, it's the same way. Or with cultivation of anything, it's the same way. If you're doing the method, it is inevitable that something will be as a result. So one sitting in, let's say, Chan practice, I'll just say this in general, Chan practice, they're sitting in meditation, and all of a sudden they hit a state that their body feels very cool. And then about 10 minutes later, their body feels very hot. Then all of a sudden they feel this rain of tingles going from the top of their head all the way to their feet. And it feels like it's just drizzling on them, this feeling, and it feels so refreshing and so peaceful and blissful. Then all of a sudden they feel a pressure at the top of their head, at the crown chakra, and they don't know the difference between there being a night or a day. They don't know if they're going to be breathing now. They don't know if they are breathing. They don't know if heaven and earth exist anymore. And they feel this subtle state of stillness. And then sometime after in their practice, they snap out of their state, they get out of their meditation, unfold their legs from full lotus or half lotus, and they go, wow, that was great. Oh, man, I must have got something. Oh, man, this is great. And they start being amazed at what they felt. This is an amazing state. I feel wonderful. My feet got cold, my body got warm, and then everything felt tingly, and I felt like I got rained on by heaven, and all of a sudden, I didn't realize if I was breathing or not. And they probably didn't. They probably weren't breathing at that point. They had their internal breath going on. So they weren't using their lungs to breathe anymore. They were using internal energy to breathe. And what happened? They all of a sudden go, that's amazing. I hit sagehood, and start going, wow, this is great. I know something about the inner workings of the universe and the mind because I got this state. And then they think every time they sit in meditation, that's the state they got to strive for. When they don't realize that is the most, and I know you know what I'm going to say, the most basic experience one is going to have when they're meditating. It's such a basic, fundamental state to go through. They didn't even get to the iceberg to even say that it's the tip of the iceberg and there's more underneath. They didn't even get close to the ice itself. That's just such a basic thing. But they'll go around spouting it. Some will. because they feel empowered. They feel that uplifted, wonderful sense, and they feel they got some type of wisdom from it. And they did. But because their thoughts, it wasn't a full wisdom, it wasn't a nourished cultivation, the enlightenment they got at that point was so minuscule that they needed more practice, and it wasn't even enough to say the word enlightenment or even spell it at that point.
So it can be used as a double-edged sword, because conversely, somebody could take that state and use that to propel them forward, whereas other people, it becomes sort of an anchor that keeps them stuck.
Yes, if they say, I am great, I am a sage, I am the best, I understand now, I am enlightened, they are definitely headed in the wrong direction. Once in their mind they put a label on what they got as being something they attained, and means sagehood, it means they got some enlightenment, they have some authoritative mannerism to speak on, meaning they can speak on it as an authority of some sorts, they are opening up a can of worms. I mean, so terrible. It'll just totally bring them down. I mean, first they'll feel empowered, and then they'll feel so empowered, and even more empowered, that this will go on for a long time. People will believe them. They'll feel like they got the charisma. You know, they feel they got the greatness going on, and people will follow them. That's the very extreme of it. And they'll go good for maybe 5-10 years, but over time it wears off. And those people stop believing in them. And over time, a lot of the fraudulent things that they've done, because they will do fraudulent things, start to come to surface. Either they lose their following and lose all their fortune, or they lose their following, they lose their fortune, they get investigated for fraud in some sense or another, they get arrested. Very, very terrible things happen. Now, there's more to it. I'm leaving out a very important word here. And in the 50 skandha demon states, we call them demons. Internal and external. Okay, these things, they can be any ghost that have a stronger energy. It could be people that you feel afflicted by, or things that they do that make you feel affected, that affect you in some way, whether it feels good or bad. Okay, anything that afflicts you and obstructs you, we'll label a demon. Doesn't mean the demon has to look really ugly, and it has to actually be a being that has an ugly looking shape. It could be a beautiful looking woman who entices you, not into anything sexual, just entices you to keep empowering your desires, keep empowering your ego, your false views about yourself. Now that's a terrible obstruction just as well.
So that brings up an important question I have. The world is overflowing with so-called gurus and spiritual masters.
Yeah.
How does one tell if you're dealing with someone who's actually enlightened, or has some ability or some degree of wisdom, versus a scoundrel?
Well, this always had seemed to be a tough question to answer for anyone to answer. One, I'm going to tell you, I'm not an enlightened being, so, people don't believe me. Research what I say, and you'll probably find out it could be true. Don't believe anything I say. I can tell you that much. How to tell the difference between an enlightened master and an unenlightened master. And we just use the term masters because it's an attainment that not many can realize, but everyone has the potential to. We just call them a master, one who has realized that kind of wisdom. In truth, if everyone had the means to actually apply their potential, then that word master would never be even spoken, because then it's just everybody being that way, So, how to tell? If the person who's teaching you, or whom you find to be an enlightened being, still holds strong to sexual desire, still holds strong to fortune, money, who needs it, who looks for it, who has the effervescent feeling and, what's that word? He displays it. Okay? It's definitely not someone enlightened. Someone spilling out sexual teachings for you to indulge in, and it's okay, and that's just something you stay away from. Someone who empowers egotistical views, someone who has an energy that pushes out an egotistical feeling, a feeling that has an arrogance to it, a haughtiness to it. Okay, that's someone you stay away from. And I'm not talking about, a person. I'm not saying go closer to the person who looks like they're so frail and soft and always says thank you and is very sweet looking and looks to be very compassionate and has the titles for all these things and, just lives supposedly the compassionate lifestyle, which really is just being nice to everybody and soft-spoken and well-spoken. It doesn't mean you're actually compassionate if you do that, but it's good to see and feel. It doesn't mean that's the kind of person you look towards. Okay? It just means you're not looking for someone who's going to be trying to prove that they got something to you. And they're not going to say things that insinuate that they got something to you. I mean, look at what I said before. Don't believe anything I say. There's many people who tell you, oh, this is what I'm telling you, but don't believe what I say. Go and find out for yourself. They're insinuating that what they're saying is true, but when you go find out, you'll find out for yourself that what I'm saying is true. So therefore, though I'm not telling you I got it, I do got it, and you're going to know I got it. I'm not saying that or insinuating that. There's a difference in my words. If you find out something that I say to be false, then that's what you found out to be false. That's for you. If it find out to be true, that's also for you too. Go ahead.
I was just sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. In my personal experience, I've been to, certain meditation and retreat centers, and sometimes, like you said, these people that are overflowing with thank yous and being polite, but I can sense underneath it there's like this cauldron of suppressed anger and suppressed ego. For me personally, yeah. I find I can just sort of sense those things in people. I have a good tend to be a good judge of character, I guess we'll put it that way. So it becomes a real thorny path because there's people that appear to be one way, but then underneath the surface they're not that way at all. And then there's other teachers that appear to be not enlightened, and then you can almost sense the light kind of flowing out of them.
Yeah, I mean when you reach, you're in the presence of someone who is enlightened. They are most likely going to be less of the person you assume them to be. They probably would be an alcoholic. They probably would smoke cigarettes. They probably will eat all the chicken and Kentucky Fried Chicken they want. Probably eat McDonald's too. Cook meat at home. They probably will be vegetarian. Maybe they will be totally ultra rich. Maybe they'll be dirt poor. But you got to have that true, deep inside feeling, and you got to be free from your own discriminating thinking about what you assume an enlightened person is going to be, because they could be anything and anyone, and because of what we assume they're going to be, we'll miss it. People once asked me in the past, several years ago, in the past there were loads of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and enlightened beings in the world, and now they don't even care. They're not even here, we can't even find them. I said, but the thing is that you don't have to look. You just have to stop looking for specifics. Because you don't know that they can be right there in the same bus with you. Okay? You maybe tripped over one of their feet, like on your travels going through a train station or something. You probably tripped on one of them. And they just gave you a stare and waiting for you to say, excuse me, and you didn't. And you missed out on the chance. I mean, but it's such a fine line, because then you'll get people who play that part, who will play I'm the enlightened person, but I'm going to play like I'm not, and then let the person believe in that falsity. And when you actually bring them a truth, they can't tell the difference between a true and a false.
Yeah, I think for me, in my own experience, I try to rely less on the intellect and more just on sort of a gut feeling. I think that's sort of the best way to approach it. Maybe that doesn't work for everybody.
Probably not. It's a method, and people should try it. Also, another thing is you shouldn't go and think just because someone has a robe on and has left the home life that they are actually an enlightened person. Actually, just leaving the home life and calling yourself a monk, whether Taoist, Buddhist, or whatever, it doesn't make you enlightened. It doesn't give you wisdom. You're still a person. You're still the person you were before, except now you got clothes of a left-home person and you shaved your head. And now you have precepts to follow, and you have to adjust the way you were before to the way you are now. So you still got to sift through all the years of you living the way you did before as a at-home person, dealing with everything the way you did. You still got to deal with all those issues. Until those issues are done, there's no enlightenment happening. But it may happen any time, that enlightenment. This whole thing reminds me of a story of the lazy monk, the monk who sits there at the gates of the temple sleeping, and when he starts hearing people coming along on the path, he gets himself to stand up, fix his robes, grabs a broom, and starts sweeping the leaves of the pathway. So when people see him, they go, "Oh, what a diligent person, what a diligent monk," and they offer their respect to him. And then once those people take off, he goes back and goes to sleep. Reminds me of that story.
That's interesting. Would you be able to discuss some of these signs people might encounter? Some of the markers?
Okay. Along the way of cultivation, they may get states where they have jumped out of the body. I'm sure we've heard of this before, where a person gets their, I guess it's called the primordial chi, or that little immortal body inside of them jumps out of the crown, the female, all these different terms for the female, the yin, escapes and goes and travels around. It's basically an out-of-body experience, basically the spirit going out, but it's really that the mind is free from discriminating thoughts at that time, therefore where you think or what you had wished to happen will manifest. You will go out of the body and go traveling around. That itself is just an inevitable outcome. See, these states of astral projection, we'll just call it astral projection because it's a commonly known term. But this state of projection, shouldn't be taken lightly as something everyone should try. I don't suggest it at all, only because it can start leading one down to the wrong path, having them think that they are a sage because they can jump out their body. Well, you can jump out the body any time of the day, any moment. Do you have the skill to do that? No. And the ability to do that during the time you're practicing, when you reach that state, is temporary. It'll go when it goes. It won't be all the time. You'll probably get it twice, 3 times at most, if you're lucky. And then you have to develop the skill to actually do that in the future. So that state just happens here and there. If we start thinking we've gained something, it's a bad state. If we think, oh, okay, something that happened, it was fun, let's move on. If you have the idea of let's move on, and that you're not going to try to use this state as a way to gain something for your own personal benefit from others, even yourself, just to gas your own head up thinking you're great, then it's good. But if you start saying, I got something, I'm great, let me go tell people what I did, and wow, this is what I experienced, and you start gaining attention from it. You start letting people look at you, and you'll start to feed off of that kind of attention. It becomes a habit. It's not going to be something beneficial. It's going to take you to the wrong way and start developing more false thinking about actually what's more out there that you're not going to get to. There's other states where people can make you feel bliss states. For example, I'll just state a guy walks in the street, sees somebody, looks at them, touches them on the shoulder, and that person just feels this ecstatic feeling of bliss, a feeling of peace, tranquility, serenity, anything you want to give to it, or any state you want to say. And that person's like, wow, I just gave that person a bliss state. Wow, I feel great. Then they start thinking they're going to do this all the times. And they're going to try to keep pulling that skill to do it all the time. And then they start gaining people's attention. And they're using it now for attention. I can give you a bliss state, believe in me, and I'll show you how to do it. You sit in meditation and you start saying all these methods that will never get the person to experience a bliss state on their own, but you have to be there to infuse it in them. And of course you don't tell them that, but you say, oh, you'll get it soon, because now you really worked on developing that skill. So now you're going to have that skill for a while. And then when it wears out, those people will not get the bliss states. They wasted all their money on sending it to you. And, well, you're either left with nobody, or you're left with someone who wants to, take you to court for false advertisement. On the other flip side, you get the good feeling of feeling a bliss state, experiencing it, you pass it to you let someone else feel that ecstatic electricity, that ecstatic feeling in their mind, and you go, whoa, that was pretty cool, but Okay, that's good. What else is there? Let's move on. You leave it alone. You got it. You did it. Okay, good. Next step. That way, you can protect yourself from being locked down into a false thinking. Our mind creates different views, and those views lock us into a cycle of those views. And
I
that's
don't know.
not a good thing.
I was just going to say, I don't even know if I should ask this question or not, because it'll probably lead to false thinking. However, do you think most of these states are mental, or would you say that some of them are physical?
Well, when we're talking in the manner of mind itself, because we are with a human body, it is physical. Because everything from the mind comes from the mind, it is mental. So they're of the same source, basically, quote-unquote source. We're just saying this is a way of keeping the conversation going and following our words and our meaning. It's all of the mind, and the body gets to experience it because we are in this body through our karmic means. This is our karmic body. Okay, so we'll feel it in our body. Yes, it's a mental state. Yes, it's a physical state.
So there really is no discrimination. It's both.
No. If someone says, "Oh, I feel this bliss state, and I feel it in my hands, and it feels great, ecstatic, vibrating energy. It's wonderful feeling. This is great." But if they didn't have the conditions in the mind to actually have that state, they wouldn't have the feeling in their body, and generally, anyway. So it's really non-discriminative. It's both in the same.
Yeah, I was just
It's the same.
sort of thinking along the lines of qigong tends to feel more, the states tend to be more physical, or appear to be
Right.
more physical, let's put it that way,
Right.
versus say meditation, where it seems to be more mental.
Interesting, because in both meditation and qigong, you're doing the exact same thing, applying concentration. So you're still using the mind in qigong. Without that applied concentration in the qigong, you will never get any state felt physically. And without controlling the mind by utilizing the body, so we can stay awake in meditation. You don't want to fall asleep in meditation. You stay awake in meditation by using the body to stay in a very uncomfortable position called a lotus posture. It makes your legs numb, your back hurt, makes you angry, frustrated. When you use those things, it becomes fuel for your awakening. And all the states you get out there while you're in meditation. So you're using the mind in both senses.
Would you be able to describe some of the states you've achieved, or do you not want to go there?
Okay, getting
maybe
a
some of
state.
the early states.
Well, yeah, because then I'll look like I'm a crazy person right now. Well, getting a state doesn't make you special. Let's make sure we all understand this. Any state you feel, whether it's a bliss state, it's an ecstatic, wonderful state, or it's a terrible, really ghastly, ghostly state, it's a state of feeling a spiritual power, a spiritual ability, or psychic ability. Maybe it's a state where you went through the heavens, or any place you traveled out of your body, whatever. It doesn't mean you're a sage. It doesn't mean you got wisdom. It doesn't mean anything special at all. Just remember that. So when I go into some of the experience I had, please don't think, for our listeners out there, I'm not trying to sell myself, because I have nothing to gain from this. And I'm not trying to make anybody believe in me. I'm just letting people understand that some of the things I experienced along the way, whether they're real or not, it really doesn't matter if they are. All I want to let you know is that I am not anything special. I'm not a Buddha. I'm not a Bodhisattva. I'm not a god, immortal. I'm just a human being who got a little idea of how to do things. It doesn't make me better than anyone else. When I was... okay, we'll go into this state. When I was around 15, by that time I was already doing meditation to a point where I would get up early in the morning, around 5:30, stay in my room before I'll have to go to school. I think around 3 hours before I had to go to classes. So I would just stay meditating for that time. So my practice was up. Then I would come home and keep practicing. So you need to know the history of this. Then as I got a little older, 16, 17, I put more hours in practice and more time in self-study than going to school, and I got my own degree and whatnot. Anyway, one of the things that happened really funny, I was sitting on my bed doing lying meditation, and all of a sudden I felt a pressure as though it was entering my body, but actually was entering the walls of my bedroom and my apartment that I lived in with my parents. The pressure felt like the walls were squeezing inward, but I thought it was in my body, but actually I was feeling it from the walls. After the state, I investigated again and was able to find the difference. At that time, I opened my eyes. I opened my eyes out of the in the state, but I stayed concentrated. And as I stayed concentrated, I maintained the focus of the state, and I was able to see all these ghosts flying into my room, and I was able to see through the walls of my room to my parents' bedroom, and all these ghosts sitting there waiting. Suddenly, this kind of like a few of these spirits, I guess, at that time, I'm quoting as if it was that time, the spirits were at my doorway, at my window, in all the corners of my room and my house. And they pushed all the ghosts out of my bedroom into another room, to my parents' bedroom. And they said to me, no ghost, no spirit, nothing will ever be able to come into this room unless you say so, so you can let them succeed at what they're supposed to succeed at, or help them fulfill what they need. Basically help them. And I didn't say anything. I said, all right, let one in. I just put that feeling, let it come in. One came in, and it jumped right into my body. It was like it was possessing, but it wasn't like I was speaking. It's what it was saying. It just let this feeling state in my consciousness. I need a few days of experience with the human body. Do your things that you do. And I will just experience. I need to realize certain things, and then I go on my way. This was the states that happened to me throughout a few years of my teenage life. Every few days, something would come, something would go. It was inconsistent. I mean, I had 3 or 4 weeks, nothing would happen, and then all of a sudden, spirits would appear guarding the doors, and then this place would be filled. And this would happen, and no, I don't know the names of these spirits, but they just came. And they weren't malicious, because they couldn't come in if they were. Not because of me, because of those things guarding me. And I would let them do as they would want with my body. Of course, I'd do what I had to do, but they would experience whatever. It turned out a few years into this practice, I would say 3 or 4 years, that the things that I was setting up before I would have these little visitors, things that I would set up would get destroyed while they were utilizing my body. They were riding me, basically. So they were not uplifting what I was doing. I had to set rules. I had to learn, basically. Set rules. You cannot do this unless you do specific things that uplift what I'm doing, or you're not going to be able to come in. A lot of them boated. That means they didn't show up. They left. And I rarely had visitors at that time. So I learned...
I was just going to say, that sounds like, for your average person, a pretty dangerous state to mess around with.
Well, I had practice done. I was practicing since I'm 8 years old, consciously meditation, like fully focused on developing the mind and whatnot since 8 years old. So, I wasn't getting sick. They weren't causing sicknesses. They weren't causing demonic states. They were just not helping me. They were not helping. They were causing me to react in certain ways to the situations I was encountering that would not empower the path or the outcome I wanted. So they were kind of messing things up as I went along. They weren't malicious. That wasn't malicious. That was just irresponsible, because they weren't evil. They were just a little not all there. But I had guards. If things happened, I would be taken care of. And I had my own mind. I was stable enough to accept that kind of work. And it happened naturally. The state came, and I felt it was okay. I wasn't confused by it. I wasn't taken by it, meaning led to the wrong path, because I still had wholesome practice before that happened. And then I had guards there, so I really wasn't worried. That was one state. By the time I was 21, and I moved out of my parents' apartment, those guard spirits came to follow me. And they say, do you want us to let them know that you moved out? Because they're all over there waiting for their turn. And I say, not yet, it's not time. And they would still be there protecting the house, make sure nothing comes in, but no spirit would know I'm here unless I gave the word for them to do that. And I refused at that point. I stopped letting that happen. Even
Sure.
if they followed the rules, I just stopped letting them do that.
Very interesting. Would you be able to offer any advice on how people can basically not attach to states?
Yeah,
What's the best way to
basically,
go about it?
best way of not attaching to states is let them just come and go as they please. Don't think you're special about it. Don't think you've got somewhere close to getting to a greater goal. You're not chosen unless you actually are a chosen being from another realm who came here to live in a human body and not experience the human body because no big deal, but to actually do something influential for the rest of living beings out here on this planet. And you'll know when it's right time, you will know if that's actually the truth for you. But overall, if you're getting any states in meditation, understand that it is just a state. If you're getting any abilities that happen to just pop up, let it be. Don't tell anybody unless they're your cultivation partners or people in your groups of cultivation who can assist in good guidance. And also tell your teacher if you have one, so they can help you be safeguarded in your mind, not to be taken by your own false thinking and then outer influences. Okay? That's the best way to do it. That's really it. That's very simple, but not many people follow that.
Well, maybe that's a good place to wrap it up. I know, there's an infinite number of possible states, and we'd be here for a long time trying to discuss.
We
them
will
all,
be
but-
here for a very long time. We can never be an end because there's all combinations of states and then combination abilities. And then there's different realms that these abilities can be utilized in. So, I mean, we can really just go into a whole entire world of recognizing states. But basically, let's just touch up on one little last thing. How do you know when you know? That's a big one. The state of actually knowing, did you felt this inherent wisdom that you got a touch, a taste of that total, full, beautiful, inherent wisdom that every single being has. Okay, how do you know you got that? And it's very easy. It's very simple to know you got it. When there is no response in stating, or no response in the experience of that wisdom, you got it. There's no response from yourself, your own mind. It's simply just that deep inner feeling that there is nothing in front of you, there's nothing around you, but there's everything in front of you and there's everything around you, and none of it is in your discriminating thinking. When all of that is done, your discriminating mind is done, when you're not attached to that, and you get this overwhelming sense that there is a thus nature, that this thusness is there, then you're getting somewhere. But once you say, I felt my thus nature, you lost. You didn't even feel it. You may get a touch, a little feeling, that little bit that says, ooh, ooh, ooh. But once we start adding more oohs to that, we'll go in the wrong way. You may have got it, but you just made a U-turn and went somewhere else. Because it takes a lot more refinement. Just because you got an epiphany of wisdom, a little taste of enlightenment, you still got to refine that enlightenment. You still got to practice. Just because you may have got some wisdom doesn't mean it's all of it. So we got to refine more. So once you feel like you got something, know that you still have to refine more. No matter how long you've been doing it, 30 years, 60 years, 80 years, and you're still going going strong, still refine. Because you do not want to add any thought that states, I got it. Because you're in for a big surprise. No matter if, let's say you did get enlightened, but it's not 100% refined. Maybe I'm just saying, throwing numbers out there. Maybe you got pretty good way out there. You've gone a long way. You're almost you're really getting to that point where you got it almost fully complete enlightenment, and all of a sudden you just let a little bit of the arrogance get to you. Now you got a few more 100 years to go instead of only 2 days. You don't know when that full, pure enlightenment's going to totally overwhelm the discriminated mind and eradicate everything. You don't know when this is going to happen. It could be in one moment, or it could be another 5,000 years. You don't know, but the more you add, the longer it takes. So once you think you know, start refining longer. Put that down, put away the I, put away that ego, put away the personality, and all the feelings of being special. Throw it in the garbage and burn it. and throw yourself in there too. I'm serious. And then you're good to go. And you're good to go.
All right. Well, again, I think we could carry on with this topic for eternity. So let's leave it at that for today. And maybe we
Great.
can always revisit some of these things further in depth down the road. So on behalf of Time Monk Radio, I'd like to thank you for joining us again, Len.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Again, I really enjoyed the conversation.
That was great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Expedient Means with Lin A. Wei on Time Monk Radio. Please tune in next week for our discussion of hands-on healing. To quote the final chapter of the Tao Te Ching, the sage does not accumulate. The more he assists others, the more he possesses. The more he gives to others, the more he gains.